So when we talk about how do I scale my business and grow it at a lower risk and a higher odds of success, we talk a little bit about acquisitions. So I have a little talk I give, which is why we're here today to talk about how to double your business without having to sell twice as much stuff.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited today. We have a special guest actually returning to speak to us. His name is Marty Fahncke. And you guys probably remember Marty from a couple months ago. And we talked about what it looks like to sell your business. And Marty gave us some great tips on how to grow our businesses so that it will be attractive for acquisition. And today we're going to talk about the other side of the coin that Marty teased us with a little bit. And that's actually growing your business through acquisitions. And it's an interesting conversation because I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we're always attracted to how do I sell more widgets? How do I get into other lines of businesses and expand my own offering? But today we're going to talk about a quicker route potentially to getting that increase in sales and therefore the increase in profit. So please join me and welcome Marty Fahncke to our platform. Hey, Marty, how are you doing today?
Hey, Suzanne, thanks for having me back. I am so excited to be here and talk about this topic with you because your audience is the perfect audience to talk about this with because they already understand so much about how to run a great business by using the Profit First methodology that they are primed to really be exponentially successful through acquisition. So I'm really excited to be here today.
Oh, yeah. And it's a very exciting topic. And a lot of people don't think about it. They think about, organic expansion, organic sales, and marketing. And there's a whole nother way of acquiring a block of business and getting instant revenue. So I'm excited about this conversation. So first of all, Marty, let's talk about what does it look like and what are the benefits in terms of acquiring a business versus growing it organically?
Absolutely. So what you're asking me what the why is, right? Everything starts with why. Well, why? Well, first of all, a business, if it's not growing, it's dying, right? There's no such thing as stagnation. Businesses have to be growing or they're dying. And so business owners, smart business owners, the people who listen to your podcast and who follow the Profit First methodology understand that they need to keep their businesses growing. And so many times they'll set very lofty goals and they'll say, I want to grow by 50% or I want to double in the next 2 years or whatever these goals are. And those are great goals. But here's the problem with that. Oftentimes, rapid growth leads to diminished profits. Why is that? Well, because when you're going out and you want to accelerate your growth, you have to spend more money on marketing, right? Well, marketing doesn't always work. Not every marketing campaign works. If it was easy, anybody could do it. There's an old saying, half the money I spend on marketing is wasted. I just don't know which half. Well, if you start spending more money on marketing, you're probably going to start wasting more money on marketing. Sales, you may have to hire more salespeople. Well, guess what? Not every salesperson is great. You may take some risks on hiring salespeople that aren't going to work out. Lots of things you can do to try and scale and grow your business means higher risk and can mean lower profits. Well, we all know that profits is key, right? So when we talk about how do I scale my business and grow it at a lower risk and a higher odds of success, we talk a little bit about acquisitions. So I have a little talk I give, which is why we're here today to talk about how to double your business without having to sell twice as much stuff. All right, well, let's talk about that. So many business owners hear about acquisitions and they think, airlines and banks and great big tech companies and things like that, the things you hear out in the headlines and on the news. The reality is acquisitions are happening all around us. And it doesn't have to be a big multi-gazillion dollar business. It can be a small business. It can be a medium-sized business. Acquisitions can be really wonderful for scaling your business and really growing exponentially and profitably. So let me talk about what that looks like. What would you say is the industry a lot of your clients or listeners are in? Suzanne, pick an industry or two that you know of.
Well, I know that they're in a variety of different industries. Like I hear medical practices, I hear construction, manufacturing. They're in a variety of different industries.
Okay, well, let's talk medical practices and construction because those are two that we've actually worked in some degree. So let's talk about construction. So if you have a construction business, how do you grow? You got to go out and bid more jobs, right? You may or may not get those jobs, but then you got to go out and hire more people if you get the jobs. You got to go buy more equipment if you get the jobs, right? And so to grow a construction business can be very, very difficult. Medical practice, similarly, you might be in a confined space. If you grow your business, you might have to move offices. Now you're going to have increased lease payments and everything else. And so there's all these ramifications of scaling, even if you know you want to. Let's say you want to grow one of those businesses. If you're a construction business and you're doing, let's say, $2 million a year, and you want to do $5 million a year over the next 3 years, you either have to more than double your business over the next 5 years and claw your way through that. Or what if you just went and bought a $3 million a year construction business and bolted it onto yours? How hard is that? It's really actually quite simple. So you can find other businesses that might be your competitors. It might be people that you already work with. It might be other contractors that you've done projects with. And you might be able to purchase that business, bolt it onto yours. It's an existing business with existing equipment, existing team, existing employees, and existing revenue streams. And you could put that onto your business and instantly grow your business. Now, statistics show that 9 out of 10 new businesses fail, right? So starting a new business from scratch is a high risk. And oftentimes starting a new division or starting a new offshoot from your business can also have a high failure rate. But if you acquire a business that's already proven, it already has its systems in place, it already has the team in place, it's already generating revenue, it's much less risk. And people say, okay, Marty, here I am. I got this $2 million construction business. You're telling me to go out and buy a $3 million construction business. Gee, I don't have $3 million. Do you? Guess what? You don't need $3 million to go buy a $3 million business. Let me give you an example of a project we just finished a couple of weeks ago. I had a client who had a marketing agency, and he was doing about $750,000 a year. And he had grown it from $250,000 when I first started working with him, doubled it to $500,000, grew it to $750,000, and he had goals of making it about a $2 million business. Well, he was clawing his way. I'd been working with him for a couple of years. He was clawing his way there, and it's hard work to grow a business that rapidly. A business came along that was essentially an identical twin of his business. It was clear on the other coast, but it popped up on the market for sale, and I said, I think you need to take a look at this business. And we looked at it. He said, that's perfect. It's basically what I do. I could plug it right into my business. The business was 4 years old. It had existing revenue stream. It had existing profits, most important, right? The business was doing $1 million a year in revenue, and it was netting $40,000 a month in profit. So almost $500,000 a year in profit on $1 million. It was a very profitable business. So $40,000 a month in profit. Now, to acquire that business, they were asking about $1 million in asking price. And so do you think that he needed $1 million? No. We were able to get him that business. His total out of pocket was $17,000 to acquire that business, which how much was the profit? $40,000 a month. Okay. After debt, because he borrowed the rest of the money to buy it, and the debt payments were running about $10,000 a month. So after debt, that business is still paying him $30,000 a month profit, meaning he paid for the entire acquisition in 3 weeks after owning the business. And from there, he's making $30,000 a month profit.
Wow.
Who wouldn't do that? People who don't know about it, people who don't think about it, which is why I'm here to talk to your audience about it, because I want people to open their minds and think about this. They're everywhere. Where do you find businesses to buy? Like I said, it could be businesses that you, anybody you pay money to or anybody that pays money to you is a prime target. Wouldn't you like to maybe own the company that you buy all your supplies from? If you're a contractor and you buy all of your supplies and stuff, what would happen if you owned the company you bought your supplies from? If you're a contractor and you have subcontractors, what if you owned the subcontractors instead of having to pay them and everything else? What if you owned your entire supply chain? That's often the first place to look, is who do you write checks to and who writes checks to you? Those can be prime candidates. Competitors. We do a lot of deals where it's competitors that look around, they go, you know what? That was actually one of my very first acquisitions that I ever did. Was I was working for a company, and this was an online an e-commerce business. This was 20 years ago, an e-commerce business, and there was this other e-commerce business that was kind of doing similar stuff to me, and we were kind of button heads constantly. And I went to my CEO and I said, "Man, these guys are driving me crazy. I do this and they do that, and they're just driving me crazy." And we were selling the same products because they were actually buying the products wholesale from my company and everything else. And so my CEO said, "Well, why don't you go buy them?" I hadn't even thought of that. So, and they were a fierce competitor, right? And I called them up and I said, "Hey, you know how we're always button heads and, we're bumping here and there, and we're fighting for the same customers to sell the same products?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I said, "What if we work together?" And they're like, "I'm open." And I said, would you be interested in selling your business?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're open to that." Now, here's the key, Suzanne. Here's the key. My business at that time was doing $1.5 million a year. Okay. Their business at that time was doing about $1.5 million a year. So combined, it was doing $3 million a year. And we were fiercely competing with each other. We acquired their company, and guess what happened? Our combined companies, and putting our teams together and putting all of our collective energies working together, we did $30 million in the next 2 years.
Wow.
Had we kept fighting, we'd have been fighting over the same piece of pie and doing $1.5 million a year, but we put our forces together. And here's the cool thing is we only paid, I think we paid about $200,000 for that company up front and bought their instant $1.5 million revenue stream, right? And then the collaboration turned that into a $30 million a year venture because 1 and 1 made 11 instead of 1 and 1 making even 2.
Wow.
So that's another reason to think about collaborating through acquisitions.
I love it. I love it. This is definitely a great way to potentially grow and not just mathematically adding, but exponential growth,
Exponential growth, yeah.
which is great.
And the key thing to this is profits, right? If you have a profitable business, your profits are an asset that can be leveraged to make this happen for you. And of course, we know because we're profit first listeners and profit first practitioners that we understand how to set aside those profits and make these things happen. And so, yeah, there are ways where you can acquire a business for literally not one penny out of your own pocket, or at most, maybe $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and have a business that's profiting $30,000 or $40,000, repay your investment in the first month and a half. And from there, you've doubled your business, you've potentially tripled your profits, and you've made your business. And one of the other things we see is, especially on smaller businesses that are, doing $1 million a year, $500,000 a year, things like, generally you're missing something. Generally you have, there's a concept called right people, right seats, right? The right seats on the bus, and making sure every job should have one person assigned and every person should have one job they do is the theory, right? If you're in a smaller business, everybody's wearing 10 hats. And while that can be okay in the beginning and while you're rapidly growing, eventually people burn out at that. And so if you're looking around going, you know what, we're missing some people, we're missing some skill sets. Now you got a choice of going out and trying to find those people and hire them and bring them in and train them and everything else. Or what if you acquire a business where the team already has the skill sets that you're missing, and you can spread that work out across a bigger team and make each person be more of a specialist at what they're doing, so they're going to be more efficient? Is that going to make your business more profitable?
And it's a lot easier to do at a multi seven figure business than under $1 million
It
too.
is,
To get
absolutely.
that.
Running a $2 or $3 million business is really way easier than running a $500,000 or $750,000 business, which is another reason why, if you're already doing, $750,000, something like that, that's a tough range. We see a lot of businesses like that. Generally, that's an owner operator. The owner's working 50 hours a week trying to keep everything afloat. They're wearing 10 hats. But if you can scale that business so you have the team and the infrastructure so that you can take a step back and start working above the business rather than in the business all day long, then you're going to be a much happier business owner. And you generally have to have the revenue to support the team to make that work. And what's one way to get there? Acquisitions.
I love it. I love it. So Marty, tell us about, first of all, who is the ideal company to acquire? What does that ideal company look like?
The ideal company, well, that can depend. That can depend. So first thing I look at is the right fit, right? Culturally, structurally, marketplace, et cetera. You're looking for, if you can, something that's going to mesh together well with your business. From there, there's some variations on how people like to go. I've worked with clients who they're looking to acquire a super well running, great business that they can bolt right on and hit the ground running. But the thing is you're probably going to pay a premium for that. I've worked with other clients who are looking for something that what we would call a fixer upper, right? So a business that they've identified that, you know what, that business has some great things about it, but man, there's some things that they're not doing great. If I brought my secret sauce to that business, I could really exponentially grow the value of that. And so they're looking for those kind of businesses, and they're generally going to get a really good deal on it from a value perspective. And you got to think about which one of those you really want to focus on, because that makes a big difference. I really like that second model is kind of interesting, because the reality is most business owners are not running their business from a profit first standpoint, and usually I talked about this on our first podcast interview that we did. One of the biggest problems with trying to sell your business is most business owners, their financials are a mess. Their P&Ls aren't in good shape. Their balance sheets are a mess. They aren't accurate. They aren't up to date. They aren't running it from a profit first standpoint, and so that makes their business less valuable. People who understand the profit first mindset, who have an operating system in their business, who've learned how to extricate from their businesses are much leaner and operate much better. Well, if you see a business in your industry who you identify could use all of that and could be improved by it, what if you acquired them, put your systems in place, made it a better operating, smoother running, more profitable business that grows in value? So that could be a possibility. But everybody has kind of a different thought. Some people are like, I don't want the hassle. I want to plug and play, and I want to grow. That's fine. And others are like, I like the challenge of finding a business that maybe needs some work, needs some of the things that I can do well, and then I can buy it fairly inexpensive, plug it into my business, and grow the overall enterprise value by improving those things that need to be improved.
I love it. So in terms of like you talked about culture fit, and
Mhm.
you know, as someone that has been part of acquisitions, I think that's sometimes not really taken seriously until it's unfortunately too late.
Mhm.
So let's talk about culture fit. What does that look like, and why is it so important?
Yeah, it is important, and it can be tough to mergers and acquisitions do happen where culture fit doesn't work well, and things don't go well. Um, in the business sector we're talking about, in the kind of the smaller businesses, seven-figure businesses, it's really important, because those businesses tend to be sometimes they're like a family, and oftentimes they are a family. Like they have family members that work there and things like that, or best friends, and they're pretty close knit culture. And so you try and put two of them together, and there might be clash. Also, businesses like that tend to be the personality of their owners. So, is one owner very laid back, high integrity, hands off management style, and then another owner is very, intense and micromanager and that sort of thing. And so, is there going to be a clash if that happens? So you definitely want to look at the culture of the ownership. And is a new owner going to improve the culture and the culture of the team themselves? It can be a little bit difficult, because usually when you're doing an acquisition, it's not something that everybody is made aware of. And so when you're looking at a business, you can't always go in and talk to every single employee, but sometimes you can. This agency acquisition that I just mentioned, my client actually was able to go in and talk to every single employee before we closed the deal, and actually was even sitting in on some client calls before the deal was closed. So he had a 100% visibility as to what the culture was that he was stepping into. Interestingly, he found one person that wasn't a great fit with the culture, who was with that company, and that one person was kind of let go, because it didn't fit the culture that they knew they were going to need in the combined company. Let me touch on that, by the way. There's this fear that people go, oh, you do acquisitions, you're going to buy the company and lay everybody off, right? Okay, let's talk about the difference between big Wall Street, Wall Street Journal headline acquisitions and small business acquisitions. In big acquisitions, yes, layoffs often occur because you might be talking about a company with thousands of employees acquiring another company with thousands of employees. You don't need two people doing the same job, and it gets to be redundant along the way. The types of businesses that we work with primarily, which are going to be seven-figure businesses, generally they don't have a problem of too many people. They generally have a problem of not enough, or not enough high quality people, because finding good people is tough, right? Hiring them, training them, it can be tough. So rarely, very rarely in our world do we see where an acquisition leads to people losing their jobs. It's generally an acquisition leading to people gaining new opportunities and finding new places to fit in a role. You rarely ever see layoffs because generally you're buying that company. You need every person that you're buying when you're acquiring a company. If there's 10, 20, 30 employees, you probably need all 10, 20, or 30 of those employees. You're not trying to lay anybody off. So that's the other reason I like doing what we do in the space that we do it, because we're creating jobs, we're creating security. We're not laying anybody off and just going in and doing what, corporate mergers where we're stripping things down and selling off the pieces. That's not what we're talking about here.
And especially during this great resignation, I think a lot of times companies are buying companies for their people, right?
Mm-hmm.
For that high caliber person that company has. So I think a lot of times, it's important to talk about that too, and just make that apparent that we don't intend to let anybody off. We want to keep all of you.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, because that is a really critical thing that people. And I've had people. Oh, you do acquisitions. Oh, you must go into a place and lay everybody off. It's like, no, man. I need those people. I don't want to lay anybody off. So I'm glad you brought that up.
So let's talk about where things go wrong. So
Mm.
when you're looking at an acquisition, where do things go wrong?
So there's a couple of areas where things can go wrong. The culture fit is one of those, right? The strategic fit um, may not always, if you don't do enough due diligence, right? So the process of acquiring a business would be, first of all, starting with the strategy. What is it you want to accomplish? What are you looking for from a growth standpoint, a revenue standpoint, in what time frame, and really understanding the strategy, and then finding the right business that fits that strategy. Problem is, what we usually see is a business owner that calls us up and says, "Hey, I found this business. I really want to buy it." We'll say, "Okay, why?" Right? We started this interview with the why, right? People don't ask why enough. So we always try and pull them back and say, "Well, why do you want to buy this business? How does it fit with what you're trying to accomplish?" And sometimes they go, "Well, my buddy's selling it and it's a good deal." Is that the right move? No. So being strategic and thoughtful about your acquisition process is the number one thing to avoid a lot of problems. And not every business owner does that. They kind of get knee jerk or excited or whatever. Number two is not doing enough research or due diligence. You really want to understand everything you can about the business. You want to do a financial due diligence, a legal due diligence, a marketing due diligence, operations, everything about the business, so that you can really understand what you're getting. Those do take some money. You've got to pay a lawyer. You got to pay CPAs to do financial due diligence. And sometimes people kind of get, well, I don't want to lay out that kind of money. What if the deal doesn't happen? And so they get a little scared off by the risk of, putting out a bunch of money. But the reality is, if the business is the right fit, it should be money that's paid back really, really quickly, right? So people kind of tend to cheap out on that a little bit, and we've seen that come back and bite some people sometimes. You want to have good legal representation. You want to have good financial representation. You want to have good strategic representation, which is the part that we do. So that's important, that you have good advisors around you and you listen to your advisors. Oh my goodness. I can't tell you how many times I've watched people pay an advisor for their advice and then do the opposite of what they just paid them to be told. I don't understand it, but I see it time and time again. If you're asking for advice and you're paying a professional for advice, they might have a reason why they're giving you the advice they're giving you. Two is waiting too long. The really good, solid businesses that are worthy of being acquired honestly, don't stay on the market very long. I've seen time and time again where we've been working with a client to do a growth through acquisition strategy. We find the perfect business and they think about it a little too long and then it's gone. On our sell side, where when we're working with clients to sell their businesses, so far this is August of 2024 that we're recording this. In the last 14 months, we have not had a single business that we put up for sale that had less than 5 offers on it. Good businesses that are solid, operationally sound, profitable businesses have buyers lining up to buy them. So if you're a buyer and you're looking to acquire a business to grow through acquisition, when the right one comes along, do not hesitate or somebody will take it out from underneath you. And we've had several deals that have been lost because people hesitate. If you're ready to do this, do it, because waiting will definitely cost you.
I love
Um,
it.
from an implementation and integration standpoint, one of the biggest mistakes I see is coming into once the deal is done, you've acquired the business, you now own it. The biggest mistake I've seen is you come in on day one and start making changes. No, take the business that you just bought, which is a great and valuable asset, and you purchased it for a reason, and it has the people in place and it has the systems in place, and learn the nuances of that business before you start making changes. I tell our clients, do not make a single change for 90 days. Nothing. Let it run, be in there, study it, be in the meetings, be in the client calls, be, working with the employees. I say take every single employee out to lunch, get to know that, like get to know the business as it is now. Then you can start saying, okay, here's where I can start making improvements and putting the two together. But I see, we had one that this guy bought the business and he literally, part of the deal was the previous owner was going to stay on for, I think, 6 months to help with the transition. And literally on the third day, he goes, I got this. And just said, he just thought he knew what he was doing. And he has practically run that business into the ground. And it's sad to see. It's sad to see. So don't make any drastic changes for the first 90 days after you own it, because you need to get to know the business before you start making changes. You don't know if tweaking something over here isn't going to break something over here, right?
Right.
So get to know the business really, really well before you start making changes.
Especially if the owner is willing to help you out. I
Well,
mean,
absolutely.
take that as an opportunity to absorb their brain.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the time, the businesses we're talking about, you're buying a business that's been already in existence for 4, 5, 10, 20 years. There's a lot of, institutional knowledge and legacy there that you want to make sure you absorb. Now, are you going to keep everything the exact same way? And because that's the way we've always done it? Heck no. But you at least want to understand what is the way they've always done it and why have they always done it that way? And if I change it, is that going to be good, bad, or what before you make those changes?
I love it. Very good advice from that standpoint. Now, we talked about funding and we talked about the ant buying the elephant. And I think that's intimidating for a lot of entrepreneurs, right? How do I buy a multi 7-figure business if I'm just up at 7 figures? And
Mhm.
let's talk about some options for that, Marty. What does that look like? What is that? Where do we find funding from?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's several different types of ways of funding a deal like this. So in the United States, we have a wonderful program that's offered by the SBA, the Small Business Administration. And that's one of the ways, if you're in the United States, that's one of my favorite ways, because if you are buying a business that is exactly the same as your business, they actually won't even consider that an acquisition loan. They'll consider an expansion loan. So what does that mean? So let's go back to our construction company, or let's go to our doctor's office. Doctor's office comes to the SBA and says, "Hey, right now I've got this doctor's office. We have 2,000 square feet. I've got 6 exam rooms. We're growing. I'd like to buy the facility next door and knock the walls out and expand us out, and we're going to expand our business." And the SBA will say, "Great, as long as all the financial support it, we'll give you the money to go do that, to expand your business," right? Well, the SBA looks at buying another business the exact same way. If that doctor's office goes to the SBA and says, hey, there's this doctor's office down the street and we want to buy them and expand our business and turn it into one practice, they look at it the exact same way, as whether it's assets like tractors and bulldozers in a construction business, whether it's expanding out the real estate in a doctor's office, you're expanding your business. And there is no money out of pocket for that. They just give you the money as long as the financials and the cash flow is all there to support the debt. They'll just give you the money, not one penny out of pocket. That's the most beautiful program out there. We love it. And we use that all the time whenever we can. Now, let's say that it's not the exact same type of business. Let's say we use my construction company model and you buying your supplier, right? Somebody in your supply chain. So that's not the exact same business. It's related, but it's not the exact same business. The SBA is going to look at that and say, no, you're going to have to do an acquisition loan. But guess what? The down payment on that is 10%. Okay. So let's say you buy a $2 million business. You have to come up with $200,000 for the down payment. Now, here's something really, really cool. The SBA has made it much easier for the seller to finance half of your down payment with no questions asked. And most sellers will do that. So now you need to come up with $100,000. And coming up with $100,000 can be done a number of different ways. They're very liberal about where you come up with that money. You can get it as a gift. You can borrow it against your home equity loan. You can borrow, you can borrow against your 401k up to $50,000. And I'm not talking about taking money out of your 401k. Never do that. That's like a 30% penalty. That's crazy. But you can borrow against your 401k at a really great interest rate because it's essentially a secured loan up to $50,000 tax free. Well, there you go. There's 50 grand. So there's a number of ways of structuring those deals where you really don't have to come up with much money out of your pocket as well. Most businesses that are for sale, about 60% of seven-figure business acquisition transactions have some level of seller financing, meaning the person who's selling you the business will finance some of the transaction. Anywhere from that 5% I just talked about up to 25, 30, even 50%, depending on the scenario. So their business is an asset. They understand that. We talk about it. We look at two things, taxes and interest rates. Okay. So that SBA loan right now is running 11%. Okay. So Suzanne, if I buy your business and let's say I buy your business for $2 million and at closing, I give you $2 million and you're going to go spend some amount of money on something. I don't know. You're going to do an around the world trip or maybe book a flight on the space thing and go up into space. Who knows? But let's say you have another $1 million left over after that. And you're going to put it in investments. And right now, of course, stock market's kind of really crazy right now. But let's say over term, you're going to put an investment that might make you 5%, 6% if you're lucky. I'm going to get an SBA loan or some other commercial loan that's going to be 10 or 11%. What if instead I pay you 8% interest on that money? Instead of you getting all the money at once and throwing it in the bank and earning 6% interest, what if you earn 8% interest through me? And what if me, instead of paying a bank 11% interest, I'm paying you 8% interest and everybody wins? So seller financing can be a really great way for everybody to win. Taxes, same thing. If you get a large windfall, all of your money at once, that does something to your taxes, doesn't it? We always hear people win the lottery and they only got half of what they won, right?
Right.
But if you get your money over time, it can mitigate your taxes and substantially reduce how much you pay. So there could be tax benefits and interest earning benefits to a seller of a business taking back or carrying some of that note versus taking all their money at once. And so that's another way that we strategize to help both sides of the deal. Everybody can win that way. So there's commercial funding, there's borrowing against a 401k, there's SBA, there's seller financing. We actually have over 225 different ways of financing a deal. There's revenue-based funding, there's asset-based funding, there's inventory-based funding. There's all sorts of ways of financing a deal. It's actually, especially if you already have a seven-figure profitable business, people are clamoring to lend you money, and funding is usually not the problem.
And, I know we're recording this in August, but our stock market this week just took a tank. I was calling
Huge.
it Red Monday.
Hmm.
Looking at the ticker, I was sitting in the airport watching the ticker and everything was pointing down. And, right now, maybe a cash flow positive business might be a better investment than stocks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without question.
So definitely a good thing to look at there. Now, you gave us some really good pointers with the 90-day, not changing anything for 90 days and giving the business a chance to just teach us, right? Teach us about what works and what doesn't work with that. Any other tidbits or advice regarding transitioning of a business that you've just acquired?
Um, I think being a visionary, being that business owner who expands their vision to the possibilities and the what ifs and the why nots is important because um, so many business owners are very tunnel vision. They're doing their one thing, and I think really having that vision to understand the legacy that you can leave behind if your business has a much bigger footprint and a much bigger impact on more lives can be so much bigger if you allow yourself to grow that way.
Very true. Very, very, very good advice there, Marty. One of the things I like to ask our guests, and I know this is the second time you're with us, but this is an opportunity to get even more advice. Um, if you could leave our guests with any piece of advice, it could be personal or business, what would that advice be?
Boy, any piece of advice, I would say keep your mind open to the possibilities. There's a whole world out there that people don't think they can play in, and don't let doubt or fear or your own self-limiting beliefs hold you back. You can, if you are already a listener of this podcast, you're already in the top tier of business owners. You already understand more than most. Leverage what you have to give to the world and just make it bigger.
I love it. I love it. And what you don't know, you can easily hire someone like Marty to 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 be able to acquire that knowledge. So definitely there's many ways of getting to where we want to go. So thank you, Marty. Very good advice on that.
Absolutely.
And Marty, what's the best way for our viewers and listeners to find you, to work with you, to learn more?
Well, I'm pretty easy to find. My name is very unique, Marty Fahncke, Fahncke. I'm the only Marty Fahncke in the entire world. So you can Google me. You can find me at my website at westboundroad.com, or I'm on LinkedIn where I'm quite active and post a lot of videos on YouTube where I teach and train on all these topics and more. So, but Marty Fahncke is easiest way is just to Google me. Easy to find.
Thank you, Marty.
Absolutely. Thanks, Suzanne.